Hi everyone, my name is Professor Jan Pacifico and I am going to be your pottery teacher for this Ancient Clay Techniques class. Um, Welcome to my kitchen. I was planning to do all these videos in my studio, but the light was just not great. And I thought, actually all the primitive peoples did their pottery at home, in their kitchen, around their campfire. So here we are in my kitchen. So I have an array of pottery in front of me, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of background and history about how pottery got started and about what all of these pots are, because they are all made the same way that we're going to be making our pots in class. So in primitive times, people were hunters and gatherers. They went out into the fields and into the woods, and they gathered up leaves and berries and seeds and nuts and all kinds of things. And if they had a basket that was pretty rough like this, they got the idea to keep things from falling through the cracks, that if they would take some clay and smear it all around the inside of the basket, it would make a much more practical and efficient basket. So one day the basket was sitting by the campfire and the kids were messing around, and of course the basket got kicked into the campfire. And so what do you suppose happened? The basket burned away, and what was left was a shell of the basket made out of clay. So those were the first pots, and they were called basket maker pots. And this particular pot is a really, really old pot, and it has kind of a design that is made by marking all the coils as they were built with a stick, probably. So other prehistoric pottery that I have, this is Pre-Columbian from Costa Rica. It has a beautiful slip design on it. This was deaccessioned from the Brooklyn Museum. And then I also have some Pueblo pottery that I'd like to show you. This particular one is Santo Domingo, and each of the Pueblos has a very distinct style. And if you see pottery that looks like this, it's very often from Santo Domingo. This one is from Acoma, and it was made by Lucy Lewis's daughter, Dolores. I took a workshop from Lucy in Chaco Canyon when I first came to New Mexico, and it changed my life forever. And I ended up moving here from Brooklyn to live in New Mexico because I just fell in love with New Mexico. This one is Hopi, and Hopi pottery is, I think, some of the most beautiful pottery around. It has beautiful designs, and the color is so different. It's got a yellow, orangey kind of color that they get because of the way they fire, also because of the clay, but they fire with sheep dung instead of cow patties, as the other Pueblo potters do. This kind of pottery is made in Ortiz. Ortiz is in Mexico. And the Ortiz pottery started because of one man, a man named Juan Quesada. And Juan was somebody who worked on the railroad. And he would go up into the mountains and find all these different pottery shards. And so he took those pottery shards and he studied them, and he figured out how to make the pots. He learned how to dig the clay. He figured out how to process it, make the pots, and how to fire them. All on his own. He never had a teacher. And now in Ortiz, there are thousands of potters who live and work there and make the most beautiful pottery. Their pottery is painted with a brush made from human hair, as a very similar way to the Pueblo potters who use a brush made from yucca. And I'm going to be showing you how to do those later on in the course. So this particular pot was made by Luzelva Ramirez and is just a beautiful pot. They use graphite to get that kind of grayed, gunmetal-y kind of look. This particular pot was made by somebody named Andres Villalobos, and it's a coyote pot that he was pretty famous for, and very beautiful, and painted in the traditional Casas Grandes style. This one is one of my favorites. It's made by Manolo Rodriguez from Casas Grandes, and it's painted with a lizard on the bottom, eating all of these wonderful little insects, grasshoppers, ants, all kinds of things, bugs of all sorts on the outside of that pot. And then all of these pots are made with micaceous clay. And that's what we're going to be using to make our pots. This particular one was made by the man that I learned how to make micaceous pottery from. His name was Felipe Ortega, and he learned from his aunt, Josefina, and she was a Jicarilla Apache. And the art of making micaceous pottery had pretty much died out until Felipe kind of reinstated it after he learned from his aunt. And now there are lots of potters in New Mexico who are proteges of Felipe. And it's a wonderful kind of clay because you can cook in it. It will go on top of the stove as no other pottery can. All other pottery can go into the oven and bake. It can go into the microwave and cook. But this particular pottery can go directly on the stove or the campfire. I've cooked many a pot of beans in this pot of Felipe's. So what all of these pots do have in common is that they're all made with the coil, scrape, and polish method. And that's what we're going to be learning together in our class. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you.